Hello friend, I am Professor Smita Jha. I am from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences and I am here to discuss research methodology in Humanities and Social Sciences with a new topic, research process. Well, the entire research act is under process, and as I said repeatedly that this is a very authenticated process, a process that is quite reliable, and to make it reliable, how to move under this process that we need to know about. A research process consists of an organized step-by-step approach to studying a particular topic or question. Identifying and clearly defining the research question or idea is the first step. Next, researchers review existing information on the topic to understand what is already known and to identify any gaps in knowledge. After that, they select appropriate methods for collecting and studying the data, such as surveys, experiments, or observations. After the data has been collected, it is analyzed in order to produce meaningful results. As final step, the findings are shared often in the form of reports or publications. By following this process, the research will be accurate, reliable, and comprehensive. The research process is to identify and develop a research question. Start by pinpointing an area of interest or a problem you want to investigate. Refine your question to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. That is SMART. Review the literature. Explore existing research related to your topic to understand the correct state of knowledge. Identify page in the literature that your research can address. Now, formulate a hypothesis if applicable. Propose an educated guess or prediction about the relationship between variables. This step is particularly relevant for quantitative research. Design your research plan. Choose an appropriate research design based on your research question and methodology. This includes selecting the appropriate sample size, data collection methods, and analysis techniques. Now, gather relevant data using your chosen methods such as survey, experiments, interview, or observation. Ensure data is collected ethically and in a manner that minimizes bias. Analyze the data using appropriate statistical or qualitative analysis techniques. Interpret the findings in relation to your research question and hypothesis. Now, draw conclusion and interpret findings. Summarize your findings and draw conclusion based on your analysis. Discuss the implications of your research and suggest further research directions. Disseminate your findings. Share your research with the relevant audience through publication, presentation, or reports. Contribute to the broader body of knowledge and inform future research. Now, let us look at these research steps in detail. Step 1. Identify the problem. Finding an issue or formulating a research question is the first step. A well-defined research problem will guide the researcher through all stages of research process, from setting objectives to choosing a technique. There are a number of approaches to get insight into a topic and gain a better understanding of it, such as a preliminary survey, case studies, interviews with a small group of people, observational survey. Step 2. Evaluate the literature. A thorough examination of the relevant studies is essential to the research process. It enables the researcher to identify the precise aspects of the problem. Once a problem has been found, the investigator or researcher needs to find out more about it. This stage gives problem zone background. It teaches an investigator about previous research, how they were conducted, and its conclusion. The researcher can build consistency between its work and others through a literature review. Such a review exposes the researcher to a more significant body of knowledge and helps him follow the research process efficiently. Step 3, create hypothesis. Formulating an original hypothesis is the next logical step after narrowing down the research topic and defining it. A belief solves logical relationship between variables. In order to establish a hypothesis, a researcher must have a certain amount of expertise in the field. It is important for researchers to keep in mind while formulating a hypothesis that it must be based on the research topic. Researchers are able to concentrate their efforts and stay committed to their objective when they develop theories to guide their work. Step 4, the research design. Research design is the plan for achieving objectives and answering research questions. It outlines how to get the relevant information. Its goal is to design research to test hypotheses, address the research questions, and provide decision-making insight. The research design aims to minimize the time, money, and effort required to acquire meaningful evidence. This plan fits into 4 categories: exploration and service, experiment, data analysis, and observation. Now, step 5, describe population. Research projects usually look at a specific group of people, facilities, or how technology is used to business. In research, the term population refers to this study group. The research topic and purpose help to determine the study group. Suppose a researcher wishes to investigate a certain group of people in the community. In that case, the researcher could target a specific age group, males or females, a geographic location, or an ethnic group. A final step in a study's design is to specify its sample or population so that the result may be generalized. Now, data collection is important in obtaining the knowledge or information required to answer the research issue. Every research collected data either from the literature or the people being studied. Data must be collected from the 2 categories of researcher. These sources may provide primary data: experiment, questionnaire, observation, and interview. Secondary data categories are literature survey, official, unofficial reports, and approach based on library resources. During research design, the research plans data analysis. After collecting data, the researcher analyzes it. The data is examined based on the approach in this step. The research findings are reviewed and reported. Data analysis involves a number of closely related stages, such as setting up categories, applying these categories to raw data through coding and tabulation, and then drawing a statistical conclusion. The researcher can examine the acquired data using a variety of statistical methods. After completing these steps, the researcher must prepare a report detailing his findings. The report must be carefully composed with these points in mind. On the first page, the title, date, acknowledgement, and preface should be on report. A table of content should be followed by a list of table, graph, and chart, if any. It should state the researcher's purpose and method, and this section include the study's scope and limits. A non-technical summary of findings and recommendations will follow the introduction. The findings should be summarized if they are lengthy. The main body of the report should make sense and be broken up into sections that are easy to understand. The researcher should restate his findings at the end of the main text is the final result. Now, research embodies the spirit of curiosity and the pursuit of truth. There are certain key characteristics. Systematic approach. Research follows a well-structured and organized approach with clearly defined steps and methodologies. It is conducted in a systematic manner to ensure that data is collected, analyzed, and interpreted in a logical and coherent way. Research is objective and strives to be free from bias or personal opinions. Researchers aim to gather data and draw conclusions based on evidence rather than preconceived notion or belief. Research relies on empirical evidence obtained through observations, experiments, surveys, or other data collection methods. This evidence serves as the foundation for drawing conclusions and making informed decisions. Research question or problem. Every research study begins with a specific research question or problem that the researcher aims to address. Good research should be replicable, meaning that other researchers should be able to conduct a similar study to obtain similar results now following the same method. Research should be conducted with transparency and researchers should adhere to ethical guidelines and principles. This includes obtaining informed consent from participants, ensuring confidentiality, and avoiding any harm to participants or the environment. Researchers often aim for their findings to be generalizable to a broader population or context. This means that the result of their study can be applied beyond the specific sample or situation studied. Research involves critical thinking to analyze and interpret data, identify patterns, and draw meaningful conclusions. Logical reasoning is essential in formulating hypotheses and designing their study. The primary purpose of research is to contribute to the existing body of knowledge in a particular field. Researchers aim to expand our understanding, challenge existing theories, or purpose new ideas. Research findings are typically subject to peer review to experts in the field before being published in academic journals or presented at conferences. Research is often an iterative process with findings from one study leading to new questions and further research. It is a continuous cycle of discovery and refinement. While some research is theoretical in nature, much of it aims to have practical applications and real-world implications. It can inform policy decisions, improve practices, or address societal challenges. At its core, the research process involves several fundamental activities: identifying a topic that needs further investigation, reviewing existing knowledge on the subject, forming a precise research question, and designing a method to investigate it. This is followed by collecting and analyzing data, interpreting the results, and reporting the findings. Each step builds upon the previous one, requiring meticulous attention to detail and rigorous methodology. The research process fosters critical thinking and problem-solving skills. It demands a clear articulation of a problem, thorough investigation, and thoughtful interpretation of data, all of which are valuable skills in any professional field. By following this process, researchers are better equipped to tackle complex questions and contribute meaningful solutions to real-world problems. The first step in research process involves finding the key theoretical concepts or words that specify the research topic and are always included in the title of investigation. Without a definition, these words have no sense or meaning. To identify these concepts, a researcher must ask which theoretical keywords are implicit in the study. To answer this question, a researcher should identify the logical relationship among the two words that catch the focus of the investigation. One of the most important steps in research endeavor is identifying a research question. Research questions answer aspects of the topic that need more knowledge or shed light on information that has to be prioritized before others. It is the first step in identifying which participants or type of data collection methods. Research questions put into practice the conceptual framework that and make the initial theoretical concepts are explicit. A literature review is the synthesis of the existing body of research relevant to a research topic. It allows researchers to identify the current state of the art of knowledge of a particular topic. When conducting research, it is the foundation that guides the researcher towards the knowledge gaps that need to be covered to best contribute to the specific community. Common methodologies include miniaturized or complete reviews, descriptive or integrated reviews, narrative reviews, theoretical reviews, methodological reviews, and systematic reviews. When navigating through the literature, researchers must try to answer their research question with the most current peer-reviewed research when finding relevant data for a research project. It is important to use the existing literature in at least 2 different databases and adapt the key concepts to amplify their search. Researchers also pay attention to the title, summarizes, and references of each article. It is recommended to have a research diary for useful previous research, as it could be the researcher's go-to source when writing the final report. A good research design involves data analysis methods suited to the research question and where data collection generates appropriate data for the analysis method. Designing a qualitative study is a critical step in the research process, serving as the blueprint for the research study. This phase is a fundamental part of the planning process, ensuring that the chosen research method align perfectly with the research purpose. During this stage, a researcher decides on a specific approach such as narrative, phenomenological, grounded theory, ethnographic, case study, tailoring the design to the unique research problem and needs of the research project. By carefully selecting the research method and planning how to approach the data, researchers can ensure that their work remains focused and relevant to the intended study area. A well-constructed research design maintains the integrity and credibility of the study. It guides the researcher through the research process steps from data collection to analysis, helping to manage and mitigate potential interpretations and errors. This detailed planning, particularly in qualitative studies, provides the depth of understanding and interpretative nature of analysis that can significantly influence outcomes. The design of a qualitative study is a strategic component of the research that enhances the quality of the result. By meticulously following systematic procedures and working through the data, researchers can ensure that their interpretations are grounded in the actual data collected, enhancing the trustworthiness and credibility of the research findings. The interpretation of data is not merely about extracting information, but also involves making sense of the data in the context of the existing literature and research objectives. This step is not only about what the data is, but what it means in the broader context of their study, enabling researchers to draw insightful conclusions. The final step is concluding and presenting the research data, which highlights how the data is analyzed for meaningful insights and credible findings. The results are typically shared in a research report or academic paper detailing the findings and not contextualizing them within the broader field. This outlines how the insight contribute to existing knowledge, suggest areas for future research, and may propose practical application. Effective presentation is key to ensuring that these findings reach and impact the intended audience. This involves articulating the conclusions clearly and using engaging formats and visual aids to enhance comprehension and engagement with the research. Now, what are the key principles for conducting research? Qualitative research is guided by key principles designed to ensure the rigor and depth of research study. Credibility is achieved through accurate representation of participants' experiences, often verified by peer review revision. Transferability is addressed by providing rich context, allowing others to evaluate the applicability of findings to similar settings. Dependability emphasizes the stability and consistency of data maintained through detailed documentation of the research process, such as in a research diary, facilitating an adult trail. Ethical integrity is critical, upholding a standard like informed consent and confidentiality to protect participant right throughout the research journey. Qualitative research also strives for a richness and depth of data that captures the complex nature of human experiences and interactions, often exploring these phenomena through an iterative learning process. This involves cycles of data collection and analysis, allowing for ongoing adjustment based on emerging insight. Lastly, a holistic perspective is adopted to view phenomena in their entirety, considering all aspects of the context and environment, which enriches the understanding and relevance of the research outcomes together. That these principles ensure qualitative research is both profound and ethically conducted, yielding meaningful and applicable insight. Why manage the research process? As distinct from a tunnel or a building, research can seem a very nebulous project to manage. At the outset, researcher can often have a far from exact idea either of research outcomes or how they are going to achieve them. Research can frequently undergo changes in direction. The collection of data can be notoriously hard to control as people fail to return questionnaires and the organization you hoped would grant access fail to do so. If research is so uncertain, why does it need to be managed? Because it is so uncertain, because to almost all research projects, from the undergraduate dissertation to the doctoral thesis or postdoctoral group projects, need to be done in a finite time, say a month before final start, in 3 years if you are funded. And with equally finite resource, you, the team, a particular budget from a research grant. A common reason why research projects come adrift is that people run out of the time. Applying project management procedures to your research project will provide you with a structure that will give you some sort of control. According to Sharp and Howard 1996, project management will help you like clarify your aims and objectives, define your activities, identify critical milestone, ensure effective use of key resources, define priorities, increase the likelihood of successful completion. The feeling of uncertainty is particularly acute with PhDs, where the student may be working full time on a project which is not due to the end for another 3 years. Other large scale research projects may also suffer from lack of definition, but there may be particular reporting requirements from the funding body which give a structure. All projects have a particular life cycle from definition to description. Research too has its own life cycle from definition, objectives to drawing conclusions and writing up reporting. Planning a project is a major piece of work and needs to be done up front. This is often difficult as you may not have a very clear idea of how the research will develop. It helps, therefore, to start off with some broad objectives. Objectives may relate to a personal or a strategic goal, such as produce a dissertation, to distinction standard, obtain a PhD, fulfill the criteria to set out the funder, but you will also have objectives for your research. Now, research information culture in international organization understand the reason behind the decision to outsource human resource function, study the role of branding in supply chain, measure attitude of librarians to the internet. You will probably need to break your main research objective down into a number of more detailed objectives, which should be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time framed. Now, once you have worked out some sort of sequence, you then need to establish how long each activity will take. There are three things to bear in mind: the total time required for the task, the time period over which the task will be executed. This is known as lapse time and assumes that you will not be devoting 100% of your time to tasks in any one period. The need to plan in the same extra time, known as buffer time, to task, always on the side of generosity when you allocate time to task. Things generally take longer than you think they will. Lapse time is often difficult to schedule accurately. You need to take account not only of other tasks in the actual research, but also of responsibilities outside the research, such as other coursework, lectures, family, job, administration, teaching. It is therefore useful to decide how much time you have available need on a weekly basis when comparing task duration against lapse time. Your weekly lapse time becomes time allocated to research. Generally speaking, the shorter the time scale of any project, the easier it is to plan, and research is no different. Thus, when planning a PhD, it may be better to plan at a fairly top level, looking at the main stage, narrowing down the topic, putting in the proposal, carrying out the literature review, deciding on the research methodology, then planning the various stages in detail once you have got there. The outcome of each stage is likely to dictate the shape of the next one. Now, dependencies on the critical path and the critical path. The next thing is the place and the activities in the order which they need to occur, and decide which are dependent on one another. Suppose your research project involved interviewing managers about their leadership style. The list might look something like this: research literature on leadership, come up with list of questions, determine sample size, approach possible interviewees, plan interviews and carry out interviews. Budget is also very important. The expenses, your budget for your research will vary very much depending on the circumstances under which the research is taking place. You are unlikely to have much of a research budget for an undergraduate project. On the other hand, if you are managing a large EU-funded research project, you may well have a budget that runs into six figure. So budget is very, very important, whether you have field work, what kind of books you have to purchase, what kind of the secondary sources, and also the availability of the internet. The short of headings you should expect to think of are staff, cost of recruiting new staff, training cost, equipment, stationery, event, advertising, and publicity. Now, identifying risk is a key aspect of project management. If you know in advance where risk is likely to occur, you can create a plan to mitigate the risk. A scientifically managed project will always include a risk log, which describes the risk, assess its impact, and identifies countermeasures. Once you are into the topic project, even though you may have to do some planning as you go along, a major management activity will be checking progress against the plan. And this will involve assessing where you are against your schedule. Are you up to date or behind? What tasks are complete of those which are not? What percentage remains to be done? If you are behind, how will you retrieve the situation? Can you throw extra resources at the problem? Reporting to someone else who may be your tutor, supervisor, grant awardee, or a sponsor, updating your project with your progress. So, distractions and opportunity, keeping your eye on the main objective can be very hard in research. For long periods, you may be involved in lengthy and frankly tedious activities such as analyzing questionnaire responses, not to mention the writing up. You need to avoid displacement activities such as tidying your desk, checking your email too frequently, mindless surfing, rather than starting to write, as well as going down blind alleys, of which there are always plenty in research. Genuine opportunities may arise, which you will probably want to consider pursuing. An interesting point in an interview, a new angle suggested by a journal article. You should always keep an eye on the main goal and don't do anything which might jeopardize the main research. On the other hand, if you are well ahead, you might want to risk a limited exploration. Take advice from your supervisor before you change the course of your research, topic, subject, and remember, you can always come back and pursue an interesting research idea at another time. There are 5 phases of research: planning phase, data collection, analysis phase, writing phase, journal submission phase and rejection, revision, acceptance phase, pitfalls. The highest yield, preempting or pitfalls in the research process occurs in the planning phase. This is when a researcher can set the stage for an optimal research process. Pitfalls that can occur during the planning phase. So, pitfall: choosing the wrong research pursuit topic, lack precision. So, consider an investigator interested in substance use research, and the first challenge is the immense amount of research already published on this topic. Pitfall: not considering research bias. A common theme noted in literature is that bias can unfortunately lead to failure to reproduce results, raising concerns regarding the integrity of science. Bias can be considered various: inadvertent, poor strategies related to data, design, analysis, and results, reporting that produce spurious results, and papers that perhaps should not be published. Pitfall: not focusing on which variables to collect. Researchers often want to collect as much data as possible, but should not build a list of variables that includes every single detail about subjects if the variables collected are unlikely to yield insight into the topic of research. The longer the data collection instrument, the higher likelihood of human error if manually data entry, and the longer duration of the data collection phase. Instead of taking time to build a database with many variables, consider cutting irrelevant variables and use that time to increase the sample size. Pitfall: worrying about the statistics after the data has been collected. A vital part of research process is ensuring you have a rigorous statistical approach. Involve your statistician every early in the project, preferably in the planning stages. They will have insight into the types of variables to collect and help shape the research method. Statistical power is an important concept to consider before data collection to avoid false negative result. It is important to define who will be declared authored at the beginning of the research process to avoid conflict. Do most people want to be an author? Yes. Does anybody do the work worthy of authorship? No. While placing general comments in a sharp document's margin may make the paper slightly better, it probably should not qualify for authorship. Review authorship criteria to determine what constitutes authorship. Clear expectations can ensure that everyone is on the same page and that feels the process is fair, especially for individuals. Pitfall: not considering limitations of work before the paper is written. Avoid this pitfall by reviewing recent manuscripts and reading the limitations section of this paper. Many of these limitation sections will make notions about generalizability to other populations. Some will discuss low power. Even the best paper in the top journals have many limitations. The best way to avoid or mitigate your work's limitations is to consider them during the planning phases. How can you set up your projects to limit limitation section? What type sample should you include in your study? Were you originally thinking of retrospective design, but it could be prospective? What steps can you utilize to control baseline characteristics between group? Consider all limitations and think about how you can control these before data collection. Now, the writing phase. While this section covers pitfall during writing phase, for recommendations on conducting a literature search, writing and publishing research, you can check other website that how to write and publish scientific manuscripts. Poor or outdated references, these are the pitfalls. No clearly defined purpose of the paper. So you can check with on the website and even the journal and other that how you can frame out the paper with a specific purpose. Also, like the pitfall, choosing the wrong journal. So choosing the wrong journal for your work can be overwhelming due to the number of options. Always look at the aims and scope of prospective journals. Look through the author guidelines to ensure that your manuscript adheres. This will save time. Review your reference list for any journals that appear more than once. If so, consider submitting to that journal. You do not want to submit your paper, wait 2 weeks, and then get a desk rejection because the editors state the paper is not aligned to the journal's aim and scope. Additionally, researchers can aim too high and spend months and numerous hours in journal as submission portals, trying to publish a manuscript in a journal with a very large impact factor. Though admirable, if the research, design and result lacking gold standard, reporting authors should consider a journal that is more likely to accept. Find a balance between the quality of your paper and the quality of the journal. Seek feedback from the other authors or senior colleagues who can provide honest feedback. With this, I wrap up the discussion, which is very important. The entire research process is important, and in my opinion, this is the backbone of the Research Act. So please kindly check with the research process and all the points I have highlighted. I'm sure with such points you could be able to pursue your research in the right direction. Let us meet in another lecture with another topic. Till then, thank you.